Hello friends, today we will be starting with the chapter of residential status. This is a very important chapter in the Income Tax Act, and the main aim of this chapter is to find out whether a person is a resident of India or a non-resident. Now you will say why? The main reason is because the tax liability of an assessee depends upon his residential status. The tax liability of the assessee depends upon his residential status. Obviously, residential status depends upon the individual's stay in India. If I am an individual, residence means where I stay. So, take for example Ricky Ponting, the famous Australian cricketer. He is a citizen of Australia. He is a citizen of Australia. But if he starts staying in India, he may become a resident of India. And once you are a resident of India, then accordingly your income tax may be calculated differently. So, the tax liability under the Income Tax Act of an assessee depends upon his residential status and not upon his citizenship. So here we are not focusing on citizenship, we are focusing on residence. One more thing you have to understand before we start the topic is the tax liability of the assessee changes from year to year according to his residential status. What I'm trying to tell you is, this year I may be a resident, next year it is possible that I could be a non-resident. So my tax liability from year to year will change according to my residential status. Now, we've been with the introduction, now we'll start with the main part of the topic. The purpose of this chapter in the Income Tax Act is to find out whether a person is a resident or a non-resident. The purpose is to find out whether a person is a resident or a non-resident. This is because if a person is a resident of India, then his world income is taxable. If a person is a resident of India, then his world income is taxable. Whatever he earns anywhere in the world will be taxable under the Indian Income Tax Act. And world income, to be very clear, means Indian income as well as foreign income. However, if a person is a non-resident, then only his Indian income will be taxable, and that means his foreign income will be fully exempt. So once again, a recap. The purpose of this chapter in the Income Tax Act is to find out whether you are a resident or a non-resident. If you're a resident, then your world income is taxable. If you're a non-resident, then only your Indian income is taxable. When we say world income, we mean Indian income plus the foreign income. Take for example, I am a resident of India. I earn 25 lakhs in India. How much? 25 lakhs in India and 35 lakhs in USA. So under the Income Tax Act, 25 lakhs plus 35 lakhs, that is 60 lakhs will be taxable because I am a resident. However, in the same example, let's say I am a non-resident, 25 lakhs earned in India, 35 lakhs earned in USA. Then only the 25 lakhs earned in India will be taxable and the 35 lakhs earned in USA will not be taxed under the Indian Income Tax Act. It is outside the scope of the Indian Income Tax Act. I hope this part is clear. Now let us go to how we find out the residential status of an assessee. There are different types of assessees: individuals, HUF, AOP, BOI, firms, political parties, trusts, companies, so on and so forth. So my friends, first we look into the residential status of individuals. Now I want to find out whether I, who am an individual, is a resident or non-resident, and for that I will look into section 6(1) of the Act to check the basic conditions. If I satisfy any one out of the two basic conditions, I will become a resident, and accordingly my world income will be taxable. So now we check the first basic condition. What does the first basic condition say? Very simple. It requires a stay of 182 days. How many days? 182 days or even more in India during the PY. So if I stay in India for 182 days, I become a resident. 200 days in India, I become a resident. I stay for 300 days in India, I become a resident. I stay for 400 days in India, I become a resident. You morons, how can there be 400 days in 1 year? Not possible. So once again, 182 days, I'll become a resident. I stay in India for 200 days, I'll become a resident. I stay in India for 300 days, I'll become a resident. But what if I stay for only 90 days in the PY? Then what? Non-resident? No. What happens is, if you do not satisfy the first basic condition, then you have to analyze the second basic condition. The second basic condition says that there has to be a stay of 60 days or more in India during the PY in the current year for which you are checking the residential status. At least you should stay for 60 days in India. And along with that, in the past 4 PYs, in the preceding 4 PYs, if your total stay is 365 days or more, then you satisfy both the parts of the second basic condition and you will become a resident. So, if I do not satisfy the first basic condition, I should check the second basic condition, where in the current year I should be in India for at least 60 days. And in the last 4 years, preceding 4 years, excluding the current year, preceding 4 years, my total stay should be 365 days at least. Listen to this very carefully. Listen to my example. Let us say I stay for 90 days in the PY. This year I stay in India for 90 days. First basic condition is not satisfied, so I move to check the second basic condition. The first part of the second basic condition requires 60 days, and I had stayed for how many days? 90 days. So the first part is satisfied. And in the preceding 4 years, my stay was 400 days. Then the second part is also satisfied, and therefore, even though I did not satisfy the first basic condition, I satisfied the second basic condition, and now I have become a resident. Correct? So, my friends, you need to satisfy any one out of the 2 basic conditions, you become a resident. But if both the basic conditions are not satisfied, 1 as well as 2, both basic conditions are not satisfied, then you become a non-resident. So, moral of the story, either you have to satisfy the 182 days condition, or you have to satisfy the 60 and 365 condition in order to become a resident. Now, if this is clear, we'll move forward. An individual who is a resident may either be ordinary resident or not ordinary resident. Any individual could be a resident or a non-resident, 2 possibilities. But if you are a resident, there are 2 possibilities. You could be the first type of resident, which is the pure resident, that is ordinarily resident, or you could be a not ordinarily resident, and the tax liability will change according to your ordinary or not ordinary status. As we go ahead in the chapter, this part will also be very clear why we bifurcate between ordinary and not ordinary. So, once you are a resident, you could be either ordinarily or not ordinarily resident. Now, in order to find out resident or non-resident, we had analyzed the basic conditions. Yes or no? So similarly, in order to find out ordinarily or not ordinarily resident, we have to analyze certain more conditions called as the additional conditions, and these are given in section 6.6, the additional conditions. Clear? Done? So we'll proceed. The first additional condition, remember, you've already become a resident. Now we are checking ordinarily or not ordinarily. So for that we are checking the additional conditions, and the first additional condition requires a stay of 730 days or more during the preceding 7 PYs. So in the preceding 7 PYs, you should stay in India for at least 730 days or more, and along with this, and your residence should be at least for 2 out of the last 10 PYs, and you should be a resident for 2 out of last 10 PYs. So in the preceding 10 PYs, at least twice you become a resident. If both the additional conditions are satisfied, you will become ordinarily resident. But if less than 2 additional conditions are satisfied, then you will be not ordinarily resident. Clear? Now, to make a summary of the whole discussion till now, let us take an example. I satisfy 1 out of the 2 basic conditions. So what have I become? Very good, resident. And along with that, I satisfy both the additional conditions given in 6.6. I hope you remember, it is 730 days or more during the preceding 7 PYs and resident for 2 out of last 10 PYs. Both the additional conditions are satisfied. Your status will be resident and ordinarily resident. When you write it, be very careful. Resident and ordinarily resident. R and OR. However, if I satisfy 1 basic and only 1 additional conditions out of 2, 1 basic and 1 additional condition, then what will my status be? I'll be a resident, but not ordinarily resident. I'll be a resident, but not ordinarily resident. Now let us say I satisfy 1 basic condition and also none of the additional conditions. I satisfy 1 basic condition but none of the additional conditions, then my status will be resident but not ordinarily resident. I can't be only resident. Once you are a resident, either ordinary or not ordinary, satisfy both the basic conditions, you become ordinarily resident. Less than 2 additional conditions, not ordinarily resident. So 1 basic and less than 2 additional conditions make me R but NOR. If I do not satisfy a single basic condition, correct? Now will I check the additional conditions? No, because I've become a non-resident, and the moment you are a non-resident, you do not check the additional conditions. So this was the basic summary of the first part of the residential status of individuals, and now we'll go into a category called as exceptions. So my friends, normally in order to find out whether I'm a resident or non-resident, 2 basic conditions are applicable. I'm not saying satisfy 2. I'm saying 2 basic conditions are applicable, means if you do not satisfy the first basic condition, there's always a second basic condition. So in a normal case, 2 basic conditions are applicable. If you don't satisfy the first basic, there's always the second basic. So we've got a first basic or second basic. Now you'll say, sir, what is a normal case? A normal case is a person who's not an exceptional case. What is an exceptional case? I'll tell you later. So in a normal case, for now, trust me, in a normal case, two basic conditions are applicable, either the first basic or the second basic. So you satisfy any one to become a resident. But in the exceptional cases, that is the three special cases, there are three special cases, these people are called as exceptions. Now here what happens is only the first basic condition is applicable, only the first basic. I'm not saying one basic, I'm saying only the first basic condition is applicable. Which is the first basic condition? The 182 days condition. This means that the second basic condition, the 60 and the 365 days condition, is not applicable and therefore it has to be ignored. So in a normal case, you check the first basic condition, you satisfy it, you become a resident. You don't satisfy it, you go to the second basic condition, satisfied, becomes a resident, not satisfied, it becomes a non-resident. So in a normal case, the answer non-resident will come at the end of the second basic condition. But in an exceptional case, all you have is the first basic condition, the 182 days condition. If that condition is satisfied, you're a resident. If that condition is not satisfied, you will become a non-resident. The second basic condition is not applicable and therefore has to be ignored in an exceptional case. In an exceptional case, the second basic condition has to be ignored. Now, how do we know whether a person is an exception? So here we go. Now see, in order to be an exception, there are three persons who may be exceptions, three types of individuals who can be exceptions. In order to satisfy the condition of an exception, every one of them has to be an Indian citizen. Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C. Three people. If they have to fall in the exceptional category, they have to be Indian citizens. They have to be Indian citizen. But in the third exception, there's a possibility that you could be a PIO. Who is a PIO? A person of Indian origin. So number one, Indian citizen. Number two, he also should be an Indian citizen. The third exception should also be an Indian citizen, or he may be a PIO. PIO, person of Indian origin. The first two exceptional category people are leaving the country, leaves India. Correct? But the third exception, that is the Indian citizen or PIO, comes to India. So we've got the first exception, an Indian citizen who leaves India. Second exception, again an Indian citizen who leaves India. Third exception, an Indian citizen or a PIO who comes to India. Now all this coming, leaving, etc. should take place during the PY because the residential status of an assessee is checked for the PY. All this we are doing to find out the residential status. So we've got number one, Indian citizen who leaves India during the PY. The second exception, Indian citizen who leaves India during the PY. And the third exception is an Indian citizen or a person of Indian origin who comes to India during the PY. Clear? Now the main part is the purpose. The first Indian citizen who leaves India is leaving for the purpose of employment outside India. So he's leaving for his rosy roti outside India, not any other rosy, that is his rosy roti, his food, for the purpose of employment outside India. Now understand, the word employment also could include a self-employment case. My boss sends me to USA to do some work, then that is normal employment. But if I am a chartered accountant and I get an audit outside India and for the purpose of audit I leave India, then also I am leaving for my employment because the word employment includes a self-employment case. Let us say an Indian cricketer leaves India for the purpose of a cricket match outside India. He will become an exception because the word employment includes self-employment also. The second person, the Indian citizen, leaves India during PY as a crew member of an Indian ship. He is leaving as a crew member of an Indian ship. And the third is the Indian citizen or a person of Indian origin comes to India during the PY for a visit. So in Hindi I tell my students, दो लोग रोजी के लिए जा रहा है. The first two are leaving for the रोजी रोटी, that is employment. तीसरा, the third, रोजी को मिलने आ रहा है, coming for a visit. Correct? That's a simple way to remember. The first two are leaving for employment. The third person is coming for a visit. Okay. Now, I want to invite your attention to the second exception. The person who leaves as a crew member of an Indian ship. What if an Indian citizen leaves as a crew member of a foreign ship? Will he be an exception or not? Yes, he will be an exception, but he will be covered under the first category, employment outside India. If you go on a foreign ship, you are under the first category. If you go on an Indian ship, you come under the second category. Clear? Let us take some examples. Let's take some simple examples to illustrate the fact, and then we'll go to the explanation of what is a person of Indian origin. Mr. A leaves India during PY. Mr. A, Indian citizen, leaves India during PY for joining duty in USA. Exception. He's an exception because he's leaving for the purpose of his employment. Mr. B, who's an Indian citizen, leaves India during PY as a crew member of an Indian ship, covered under the second exception. Mr. C, who's a person of Indian origin, comes to India during PY for permanent settlement in India. Not an exception, because the third category allows you the exceptional status only if you come for a visit. Mr. C, who's a person of Indian origin, comes to India during PY for a visit. Now he is an exception. Mr. D, who's a foreign citizen, leaves India during PY as a member of crew of an Indian ship. Not an exception, because he's a foreign citizen. The second exception is only if you're an Indian citizen. So you have to check all the parts. He should be an Indian citizen, he should leave India, he should leave during the PY and as a crew member of an Indian ship. If he is a foreign citizen, then he cannot be covered under the exceptional category. Correct? Now, who is a PIO? These people are foreign citizens. The person of Indian origins, that is the third category, they can be foreign citizens who are people of Indian origin. These people were affected by the partition and therefore today we still would like to give them the exceptional status. Let us see the definition of PIO. It says, a person shall be deemed to be of Indian origin if he or either of his parents, mother or father, either of his parents or any of his grandparents were born in undivided India. So today if you are a foreign citizen, but you or either of your parents or any of your grandparents were born in undivided India, that is India before the partition took place, when India, Pakistan and Bangladesh were one single country. If you or either of your parents or any of your grandparents were born in undivided India, then you become a person of Indian origin. Is that clear? So who's the PIO? If he or either of his parents or any of his grandparents were born in undivided India, and mind you, undivided India includes only India, Pakistan and Bangladesh before the partition of 1947. Nepal, China, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Australia, West Indies were never ever a part of undivided India. Undivided India includes only India, Pakistan and Bangladesh before the partition. Remember, no other country comes into undivided India. Okay, now let us analyze further a shortcut for you. If you get a foreign citizen in the question, how to find out whether he's an exception or not? Look, if the foreign citizen may be a PIO or may not be a PIO. If the foreign citizen is not a person of Indian origin, then he is a normal case. Normal case means, as usual, check the first basic, not satisfied, check the second basic. But if he is a person of Indian origin, that is he or either of his parents or any of his grandparents were born in undivided India, then he becomes a person of Indian origin. And now, my friends, what you will do is you will check whether this person has come to India during the PY for a visit. If this PIO has come to India during the PY for a visit, then only he becomes an exception. Any other PIO except the visiting PIO, if there's any other PIO, any PIO who comes for permanent settlement in India, any PIO who leaves India, then such PIOs are normal cases. Such PIOs are normal cases. They are not exceptions. So many students, you know what happens? The moment they see PIO in the question, they are very happy. They say exception. No. If you find a PIO in the question, further look whether he has come for a visit, and only then he becomes an exception. Okay? We'll be covering such things in the problems, so your concept will be very clear. Now, let us say the question says Mr. A is a British citizen, foreign citizen, but does not give you any information of whether he is a PIO or not a PIO. Then what to do? Assume he is a normal case. Because if the person was a person of Indian origin, additional information will be given in the question. If there is no information in the question, then you have to assume the PIO is a normal case. Assume that the foreign citizen is a normal case. So once again, the foreign citizen may be a PIO or a non-PIO. If no information is given in the question, then the foreign citizen is a normal case. Non-PIO is to be assumed. If he is a PIO, information will be given in the question. Correct? Okay, let's proceed. Let's take some examples. Okay, this gentleman which you see on your screen coming slowly, let's call him Mr. A. And Mr. A leaves India during the PY for the purpose of his employment, that is for joining duty. Where? In USA. Let's say he is leaving for joining duty in USA. So is he an exception or not? The answer is yes, he is an exception because he leaves India during PY for employment. Let's say Mr. B, he is an Indian citizen. He leaves India. He leaves during PY. And why does he leave? There you see, a crew member of an Indian ship. He is an exception. Second exception. Let's see another example. Miss C leaves India during PY. This is Miss C. She leaves India during PY. Obviously, a dress should tell you. And why does she leave? To marry. To marry who? The son of the Duke of Buckingham. Is she an exception? No, because marriage is not an employment. So if you leave India, you're an Indian citizen, you leave India during PY, then you should either leave for the purpose of employment or as a crew member of an Indian ship. If the question does not tell you whether the person is an Indian citizen or not, you can safely assume by looking at the tenor of the question that he is an Indian citizen. Like here in this question, Miss C leaves India during PY. I did not tell you whether she is an Indian citizen or not. In the absence of such information, you assume that she is an Indian citizen. Okay? Clear? Now, important. The residential status of an assessee, of an individual, depends upon his stay in India. And stay in India means the number of days. Now, there's a counting rule which says that the day of entering India as well as the day of leaving India, both should be counted and included in the number of days of stay in India. So when you count the number of days of stay in India, the day of entering India as well as the day of leaving India, both will be counted as the stay in India. If I come on 1st August into India, then 1st August is also to be counted. If I leave on 25th December, then 25th December is also to be counted. The day of entering India and the day of leaving India, both should be counted as the stay in India. Now, my dear friends, when I say India, India includes any part of India. India includes any part of India. This is common sense. Now, another very, very important point, and this was an amendment introduced. It says if you are a crew member of a foreign bound vessel, a foreign going ship, then these foreign going ship crew members, these people experienced a bit of problems because they used to arrive on the ship at a particular date, but the ship used to leave at a later date, and that tax planning of the residential status and accordingly their tax liability used to be badly affected. Now, to protect these people, they have said that look, as far as a person who goes on a foreign ship is concerned, a crew member of a foreign bound ship, a ship which is leaving India and going to a foreign place, the period which is starting from the date of joining, the period starting from the date of joining the ship to the date of signing of the ship. It does not matter when your ship leaves India, when your ship comes to India. So you have to count from the date when you join the ship up to the date of signing of the ship, and this period is mentioned in your continuous discharge certificate. There's a certificate given to you by the maritime authorities called as a continuous discharge certificate. So the period mentioned in the continuous discharge certificate, that is from the date of joining to the date of signing of the ship, as mentioned in the continuous discharge certificate, this period will be treated as stay outside India. This period will be treated as stay outside India. Now we'll go to residential status of non-individuals. Now when I say non-individuals, it means it could be an HUF, it could be a partnership firm, etc. Any non-individual. But here I am not including companies because the residential status of companies I'll be discussing separately. Okay. Now any assessee except an individual and a company, HUF, firm, and others, AOP, BOI, etc., any other assessee except a company and an individual. Okay. Here you look at the management and control. The management and control, the place where the effective decision making is done is the management and control. This will be clearly told to you in the question. And if the management and control is fully in India, then you will become a resident. If it is even partly in India, still you will become a resident. So in case of an HUF, firm, AOP, BOI, any other assessee except a company and an individual, you look at the management and control, and if the management and control is fully or partly in India, you will become a resident. That assessee becomes a resident. This means if the management and control is fully outside India, then that assessee will be a non-resident. Simple example. The management and control of an HUF is partly outside India. Now it takes common sense. If it is partly outside India, that means it is partly in India. And if it is partly in India, the HUF becomes a resident. The management and control of a partnership firm is fully outside India. The partnership firm becomes a non-resident. So I believe this is clear. Okay. Now you'll have a doubt. You'll say, sir, resident, non-resident, fine. But what about ordinarily and not ordinarily resident? So let's clear that too. How do we check the OR and NOR for non-individual? Any assessee who is not an individual. So my friends, if you are a resident HUF, if this non-individual is a resident HUF, in that case, you start analyzing the Karta. Remember, the other assessees, the concept of OR and NOR is not applicable. The concept of OR and NOR is applicable only for an individual and an HUF. And that too, it will be applicable only for a resident HUF. If you are another assessee, like a non-resident HUF, a company, a firm, the concept of OR, NOR is not applicable. Now you are an HUF, you've become a resident. In order to find out whether an HUF is OR or NOR, you analyze its Karta. You analyze its Karta. We are not finding the status of the Karta. We are trying to find out the status of the HUF, and for that we need to analyze the status of the Karta. Now, if the Karta satisfies both the additional conditions given in 6.6, that is the 730 days or more in India and the resident for 2 out of last 10 PY, 730 in last 7 years, resident for 2 out of last 10 years, the Karta satisfies both these additional conditions, then the HUF becomes ordinarily resident, otherwise the HUF becomes a not ordinarily resident. So my dear friends, only a resident HUF can be OR or NOR in a non-individual case. Non-resident HUF, company, firm, etc., they do not become OR and NOR. If you are a resident HUF, you analyze the Karta. The Karta satisfies both the additional conditions given in section 6.6, then the HUF becomes OR. If the Karta does not satisfy both the additional conditions, satisfies less than 2 additional conditions, then his HUF becomes NOR. I hope this is clear. Now, let us deal with the residential status of a company. Now, in order to find out the residential status of a company, we look into whether the company is an Indian company or a foreign company. My dear friends, an Indian company is always a resident. Indian company is always a resident. You need not look any further. Do we need to look into the management and control, place of effective management? Nothing. A company which is formed and registered under the Companies Act 2013 or an erstwhile Companies Act like the 1956 Act is an Indian company. And an Indian company is always a resident. Matter ends. Now, as far as a foreign company is concerned, you've got to look into the poem. Twinkle, twinkle, little stars. No, not that poem. A poem is an acronym for the place of effective management. And if the place of effective management of a foreign company is India, then it becomes a resident. Whereas if the place of effective management of a foreign company is outside India, then the foreign company becomes a non-resident. The concept of place of effective management poem, the concept of the place of effective management will not apply to those foreign companies who have a turnover up to 50 crores in the previous year.